Değerli misafirler, denizcilik sektörünün değerli katılımcıları, hepiniz tekrardan hoş geldiniz. KOSDER ve Alfa Marine olarak bugün güncel konularımızdan, sizlerden de gelen yoğun talep üzerine, EU ETS üzerine bir seminer yapmaya karar verdik. Telefon çalıyor. Bundan sonra da KOSDER ve Alfa Marine olarak tekrardan bu seminerleri yapmaya, sizleri güncel regülasyonlar, yeni kurallar ve sektörle alakalı karşımıza çıkacak olan problemlerle ilgili bilgilendirmek için bu tür toplantıları düzenlemeye devam edeceğiz. Organizasyonda birlikte hazırlık yaptığımız, sizleri burada ağırlamaktan büyük mutluluk duyduğumuz değerli KOSDER Başkanımız Sayın Hakan Çendi'yi davet ediyorum. Hepinize tekrardan hoş geldiniz diyorum. Görüşmek dileğiyle. İyi seminerler.
Dear members, dear guests, thank you very much for your attendance our seminar. First of all, I would like to thank to Alfa Marine and also our sponsor, Mr. Celal Akata and Mastership. They gave us usual support. Dear Celal, Mr. Celal, thank you very much again. As you well know, every new regulations means new setup, new cost, new works, and additional works our ships and offices. That's why we discussed with the Alfa Marine in order to arrange this the meeting and seminars here for our questions, for our future the works. We should share about the knowledge, our experience, and the other information we have to share about the industry. I hope this event will be mutual benefit for both sides, and we will continue cooperation with the Alfa Marine. And thanks a lot, Mr. Celal, for your support. Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Philip Tschlis. I work with Alfa Marine. Why are we here? First of all, to exchange knowledge and information. And second of all, to try and prepare for what's coming. Okay, in order to prepare for what's coming, we must have a good idea of what the requirements are. So why am I here today? I spent the last 5 years dealing with MRV, ETS, etc. Our company in Piraeus has prepared the MRV plans for more than 1,500 vessels, all types of ships. This was, of course, in preparation for ETS, which has already been applied to the larger ships. We have already witnessed the practical implications of ETS in shipping. We have been involved with every step of the process, from reporting to verification, to the charter party clauses, to the payments, to the purchase of allowances, to the surrendering of allowances. Everything has already happened for the big vessels. So it's time now to transfer this knowledge and this experience to yourselves. First of all, I would like to thank KOSDER for giving me the opportunity to be here together with you today. We will be focusing on the application of ETS and MRV to vessels below 5,000. We are talking about offshore vessels and general cargo vessels only. So far, the European Union has applied MRV to these types of vessels only. Okay. We are not certain that even these vessels will be under ETS in the future. There have been talks that general cargo ships below 5,000 GT but above 400 will be subject to ETS from 2027, but this has not yet been officially announced. Okay, this is just a guess at this stage. So, we will discuss, first of all, how we got here. Why do we have these European regulations forcing our hand and making us comply with European regulation instead of IMO getting the work done. We will discuss about the requirements, what we have in front of us. This is already official. It has been already published. We know that vessels, general cargo vessels below 5,000 GT will have to report for MRV from next year. Okay, so what does this mean? What do we have to do? Which are the basic steps we need to follow? Then we will do a short break and start discussing about ETS requirements. What is emission trading? How does it work? I'm in shipping. Why should I know about the stock market? Okay, so we will lay down all the various requirements and how it works. Then we will focus on practical examples. What does it mean to comply with ETS? Where do I get my allowances from? What do I have to agree with my charterer? How does it practically work? What is the holding account? What is the trading account? You know, all these practical things, just to give you a first idea of how this thing called ETS works. And believe me, it may seem like a new thing to us in shipping, but it has been working for 15 years. Energy companies and big factories in Europe have to comply with ETS since 2005, 2008. Aviation companies were also under ETS from 2015. So all this system already works. It is very robust. All the various parameters and stakeholders are in place. Shipping is just coming into it. Okay, this is a system that is already in place. We are just the last ones to join the party. Okay. Now, I left the Q&A session at the end. This whole presentation will be shared by email to all of you. There's no need to take into any notes or anything. I would suggest that we note all the questions and address them at the end. Okay. So, why are we here? First of all, there are two acronyms that are the main topic. The first one is MRV, the second one is ETS. MRV stands for Monitoring, Reporting and Verification. It's like reporting every year to your tax authorities. Okay, you note down your consumption, you calculate your emissions, and you report them to whom? To your verifier, to an entity accredited under a specific ISO standard that will do the verification, that will, let's say, verify that what you say is true. Okay, we're not talking about 100% accuracy here. We're talking about 95% accuracy. Okay, ETS, on the other hand, is what you pay. It's the emission trading scheme. So as soon as you finish with verification, you know that your vessel has emitted, let's say, 1,000 tons of CO2. Okay, ETS comes in and says, okay, you will have now to pay for this. And not to pay a penalty or a fixed tax. No, you will have to go out and purchase so-called EUAs, EU allowances, which is a commodity traded in the European Energy Exchange. So they force you to buy stocks, in other words. Okay, we'll see later on how this works. So MRV is the reporting part, how you report your emissions. ETS is how you pay for your emissions. Okay. All this started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where the European Union was fed up with IMO taking too much time to implement environmental regulations and said, okay, as a first step, we intend to start the MRV system. This was also a means of putting political pressure on IMO in order to take more actions related to the climate change. Why is that? Because on the one hand, EU has already been committed. It is an EU law that we have to reduce emissions. IMO has no such commitment. Okay, they do not care so much. So, in order to put some pressure on IMO, the EU adopted MRV. Why did they adopt the MRV, where you have to report your emissions and that's it? In order to allow for IMO to take some measures And they said, we will wait 5 years to see if IMO takes the appropriate steps, then MRV will stop to exist and we will implement IMO's regulations. What did IMO implement within these 5 years? CII and EXI. In other words, a hole in the water without any drastic effect on emissions. Neither did EXI reduce dramatically emissions from shipping, nor did the CII. Okay. So they said, okay, now 5 years have passed. It's now time to include shipping in EU ETS. Why? Because we as a European Union have already committed ourselves. We have an EU law that states that we should reduce emissions. And we have a specific target. The target is to reduce the emissions, total emissions within the EU by 55% until 2030. This is why ETS is under the Fit for 55 EU package. The goal for the EU is to reduce total emissions throughout all industries by 55% until 2030. And do you know why they are extending ETS to cover also the small general cargo vessels? Because they see now that their projections estimate that by 2030, with all these regulations that they have implemented, the result will be 48% reduction, not 55%. This is how EU works with numbers. It's plain and simple. So it might be possible that we will see the ETS being extended to other types of vessels, perhaps, to other sectors as well. I don't know if you heard, there's a new regulation coming in next year it's called Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. If you import cement from Turkey to Europe, you will pay for ETS. And this is a very clever way of extending ETS because I don't know if you know, but there are 27 ETS systems worldwide right now. There's a Chinese ETS, there's a Korean ETS, there's a US ETS. There are many such systems. None of them involves shipping. The EU ETS is the first one that applies to shipping as well. The UK ETS may apply within a couple of years. The UK have announced that they will also apply to shipping, but they have not yet clarified whether this will apply to domestic shipping or international as well. By extending the application to goods imported from other countries, it is very logical to assume that, for example, in Turkey, they will say, why should we pay for the decarbonization of Europe? It's not fair. So we will apply ETS on our own. In this way, the EU ETS will be extended throughout the globe. At the end of the day, the most likely scenario is that we will have a global ETS. Okay. But the EU is the pioneer. They are the first ones. Why? Because they are committed under law to reduce their emissions. It's very simple. So they have to follow it. And you know the Europeans, they are very bureaucrats. If they say something, they go blindly and they follow it. So the most likely scenario is that thing that we will discuss today will become more and more important in the future. It will not cease to exist magically one day. The most likely scenario is that we will be talking in a few years about a UK ETS, a US ETS, maybe even a Chinese ETS. Okay. So it all started 2018. Just to give you an idea, we as Alpha Marine, we have been involved since the beginning because we had to prepare all the MRV plans for our clients. We have prepared these plans for more than 1,500 vessels. So we have been there from the beginning. Apart from that, as soon as shipping became part of ETS, the first thing we did is, okay, it's already a system that's in place. It has been applied to the land industry and aviation. What can we learn from them? So we got in contact with traders and other industry stakeholders, trying to gather knowledge of how to manage ETS, because it's a rather new thing. I mean, it would be simple enough if we had to pay a simple tax, but no, it's more complicated, and there's a reason for that. So we tried to catch up to the knowledge that has been already there in other industries. Apart from that, we are also in contact with charterers, so we have a pretty good idea of how they are managing their costs, because most of the cost for ETS will not be paid by owners, it will be paid by charterers. At the end, it would be paid by end consumers like you and I, of course, but whoever pays for the fuel pays for the ETS cost. This is one of the basic principles of ETS, the so-called polluter pays principle. So if I have a vessel under time charter, I should ensure that the cost for ETS falls on the charterer. It does not come out of my own pocket. If, on the other hand, I have tankers on the spot market, for example, and I pay for the fuel bill, I need to manage, I need to know what this extra cost will be for ETS, because I will have to cover it. Okay. Getting involved with all this, of course, did not leave us outside the whole legal business. There's a legal aspect to that. How do I ensure that the charterer will pay? When will he pay? In what form will I receive this? In money or in EUAs? So we have been already reviewing a lot of charter party clauses, and believe me, there's many different clauses that are in place under charter party agreements. I will give you an idea of what goes on in each industry for this. And at the end, I have prepared also some practical examples to see how this process actually works with examples. I will try to get you involved as much as possible, so during this last part of practical implementation, we will try to have some examples from your own day-to-day routine. Okay. So the goal here is to have a little bit better understanding of what this thing is. In any case, do not panic, do not be afraid. I've seen this actually work. It's fairly easy. It's just knowing the various stakeholders and what each one of them does. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's not some nuclear science or whatever. We are in shipping. This is just another additional requirement that we will meet, and we will play it better than anybody else. Okay, this is the mentality. Since aviation is doing it for so many years, I don't think that we will have any problem, okay? So, let's do a little bit of history, because we have to know where this all came from. We've heard of the Kyoto Protocol and everything, okay, shipping was not touched back then. As we said, the EU had committed under these protocols to reduce emissions. They started with energy companies. Why? Because they are the big polluters. They are emitting the most CO2. Okay. Then they came to aviation. And they said, okay, we're not meeting our goals. We have to do something else. Who is next? Shipping. How much is shipping emitting, really? I guess you have an idea that the global fleet is about 2.7% of total emissions. Okay. So it's the most efficient mode of transport. It's emitting far less than any other transportation industry, but the EU is not achieving their goals. So we came in last. Okay. So they said, okay, let's start. That was 2015 when they first said that, okay, shipping will be under MRV. We said, okay, business as usual. We simply have to report our emissions. Then what happened? IMO followed. So this was the first result. As soon as the European Union announced that shipping will be under MRV status, IMO came a year after saying, okay, I have my own system called DCS, Data Collection System. This applies also to vessels above 5,000 GT. So the large vessels, since 2019, they have already implemented this, fairly easy, reporting. All this didn't change anything in our pocket. Nobody was forced to pay. Okay, we simply had to report every year. All right. Under a lot of pressure, IMO, what did it do next? EXI and CII. And the European Union says, this is not enough. I gave you, Mr. IMO, 5 years. You only implemented these two things, zero effect or close to zero effect. It's now time to do my own. And they said, okay, Fit for 55, which has two main pillars. ETS is only one pillar. The other pillar is called Fuel EU, but this is for next year. It applies to bigger vessels. I will leave this outside, but just so you know that Fit for 55 is not just ETS. It's a lot of other things. So all vessels loading or discharging in Europe above 5,000 GT since January 1st, 2024, they will also have to pay for ETS. Okay. What is IMO currently doing? Of course, there's a big fuss about, we cannot live with one regulation in Europe, another one in the US, another one in China. It becomes too fragmented and too difficult to trade. So under all this pressure right now, IMO is thinking about implementing something similar to ETS. Nobody knows exactly what this will be. It will either be a fixed carbon tax or a global ETS or some other scheme in order to do what? In order to do two things, actually. To gather some money in order to invest in clean technologies. That's one thing. And second is to make alternative fuels more attractive by increasing the price of fossil fuels. So if HFO price due to ETS is increased by, let's say, 50 euros, that means that the spread, the difference between alternative cleaner fuels becomes smaller. So you get more incentive to try alternative fuels. So there are two goals, actually. To help the whole chicken and the egg problem, give money to R&D, to new technologies in order to make it go quicker. And on the other hand, to make alternative fuels, cleaner fuels, more attractive. It's the same two goals for ETS as well. So IMO is thinking of implementing something similar, a global tax or a global ETS for fuel and a global fuel standard which will correspond to the Fuel EU requirements. So we're going to see this within the next couple of years. We'll have a clearer idea of what will happen. At the end of the day, what do we want? We want ships to stop polluting. Okay, this is the end goal. We want cleaner ships. That's the whole idea. But in order to do that, the industry is not ready. There's no technology available right now. If I were to build a new ship, I cannot build one that will burn hydrogen. Where will I find it? Where will I do my bunkering? There's no infrastructure about this. Okay, so in order to assist this process to become quicker, they're trying to get money and invest in all this. Okay. This is very well illustrated here. So these are the IMO goals. These are the latest one coming from MEPC 81. That was a month ago. What IMO wants is to be net zero by 2050. Okay, for the shipping industry as a whole to be net zero by 2050. They're looking 2030 at a total of 20% reduction. Now, if you compare it against what the EU has as a goal, you see there's a big gap. This gap is the reason why we have this EU regulation. If IMO changed their goals and said, okay, we will go to 55% reduction, EU would be happy. We would not be here discussing about the EU ETS. We would be here discussing about the global ETS. All right. But there is this big gap. And this is why we're having both these sets of regulations in place. Now, let's discuss a little bit about what's ahead of us. Okay, what has been already implemented, what has been published. This is what we know, and we have to comply. So, for all general cargo ships and offshore supply vessels below 5,000 GT but above 400 GT, until the end of the year, we have to implement an EU MRV monitoring plan. What is this monitoring plan? This is a set of procedures. It describes how you measure your consumption, the distance that the vessel sails, the cargo, and the time. Okay, these are the main 4 parameters. In this plan, we have the data collection methodology. For example, I measure my consumption by sounding the tanks at departure and arrival. I have my ROBs, remaining on-board quantities. I calculate the difference so I know what the vessel has consumed between departure and arrival, so I know my consumption. Okay, this is one example. Of course, the requirements go a little bit further. You have to also provide an alternative backup method. What happens if you have a data gap, if you are missing some voyages? And all this applies only to voyages at an EU port for loading and discharging. If you stop for bunkering, it does not count. So only if you're loading or discharging in Europe. Okay. The next thing is reporting, how you report all this information to your verifier, class or any other organization who is accredited under the specific ISO standard. So you have to report every year. And last, the verification. Your verifier will do 2 things, actually. He will review your monitoring plan and say it's okay according to the regulations. And second, and more important, every year he will verify your emissions. Now, how they will do that? Let's imagine a vessel going from Turkey to Italy for discharging. Okay, you have 1 voyage. You know that your consumption was, let's say, 100 metric tons. Times 3, you have 300 tons of CO2, roughly. Okay. You go to your verifier and you say, okay, this is my ROB in Turkey, this is my ROB in Italy. Total distance, 500 miles. It took me 12 days, whatever. And this is the data I submit to you. What they actually do is they cross-check all this against, first of all, AIS data, so you cannot lie about your distance. They know the distances. Second of all, against ship-specific information such as sea trials, SOP tests, so it's not easy for you to lie when it comes to consumption. And all this is done annually and at a fee. So when you go to your verifier, you will go to various classification societies and other organizations, you will request a quotation for this. They will give you two prices, one for the verification of the plan, one-off, and one for annual verification of the data. This is where the money is, because you will be paying this every year for every vessel. Okay? There are 3 basic principles to MRV. If you forget about everything I'm saying here, just remember this. This is the most basic thing to remember about MRV. First of all, the voyage changes only when the ship's cargo changes. Even if you discharge 1 ton of cargo, your voyage changes. If you stop for bunkering, for stores, for me to come on board, for any other reason apart from cargo operation, the voyage does not change. Okay. We will see a practical example of this later on. Second, when we say a voyage, it's the time period from berth to berth. If you go to Mississippi, as soon as the pilot boards, you declare end of sea passage. This is not the case. The end of the voyage is as soon as the vessel berths, all fast. Okay? And the third basic principle is that when we say annual reporting, we are talking about from January 1st to December 31st. If we are at sea on January 1st, we go by the ROB January 1st daily noon report. Okay? We split the voyage. If we get a vessel right now, if we buy a new vessel, we are liable to report from the day the vessel became under our management. Okay? So it's the time period that the vessel remains under my management. These are the three basic principles. If you remember these three things, and we will come back to them again and again, you have a very good understanding of MRV. Let's do an example. So imagine we have a vessel loading Shanghai, part loading in Shanghai. So the very first cargo was on board in Shanghai. The vessel proceeded to Singapore to do some bunkering, but also complete loading, load some additional cargo. Then the vessel sails, stops at the Suez Canal for bunkers, no cargo change, and then partly discharges in France. And then the vessel leaves to complete discharging in Denmark. Who will answer me this question? How many EU voyages do you see here? Who knows? Don't be afraid. Yes. The majority is correct. There are 2 voyages. Which 2 voyages? The first voyage, first of all, how many voyages in total we have? We have 1, 2, 3. Okay, because the stop at Suez doesn't count. It's not for cargo operations. Clear? Okay. The first voyage is Shanghai to Singapore. Both ports outside the EU, so it is not an EU voyage. The second voyage is from Singapore to France. Okay, this is an EU voyage because one of the 2 ports is EU. The third voyage is intra-EU, France to Denmark. So we have 2 voyages for... Actually, the correct answer is 3 voyages because at the end of the day, from Göteborg, you will go somewhere else. This will also be an EU voyage. If the vessel leaves to go to load in Brazil, this will also be an EU voyage. If one of the 2 departure arrival ports is EU, you have an EU voyage. If you have 1 cargo operation in EU, you immediately have automatically 2 voyages. 1 going, 1 leaving. Yeah, that's what I said. So it's actually 3 voyages. What happens if I stop in France January 1st? The first voyage will be 1 report. The second will be in the other year's report. So they will be reported with 1 year difference, okay? Remember, 31st of December, the reporting period ends, no matter what, no matter where you are, okay? So, what do we report? Usually, most of shipping companies tend to implement the simplest way for reporting, the minimum amount of data. What is this minimum amount of data? What do I need to report every year? Departure, arrival, port, because I need to establish whether I have visited an EU port. Usually, this comes with a fly out, whether it's an EU port, yes or no. So the master declares that this is an EU port. And of course, this is the first opportunity for error, as you can imagine, because there are many captains, for example, think that Russia is part of the EU. I've seen this many times. Okay, happens. The second parameter to report is date and time of departure and arrival, UTC. Okay. The third is, of course, consumption, so ROBs. Why ROBs? You can also report daily consumption, but you will have to report 365 different rows. If you go per voyage, it's less data, so less chance of error. Usually, most of the shipping companies tend to report per voyage. Doesn't mean that you cannot report daily as well. It just simply means that there's a lot more work. Fourth parameter, bunkering. For every bunkering, we have to not only report the amount and date and type of fuel, but also give to the verifier the BDN. So what happens is you scan every single bunker delivery note, and at the end of the year, you also provide it to your verifier. Fifth parameter is the cargo quantity, useless but a requirement. And the last thing is the distance. miles that the vessel has sailed. This is the data, the information that you will need to report every year. Nothing more and nothing less. So, how does this work? We have until the end of this year to prepare, this is the first step, the monitoring plan, the procedural thing. Okay, don't imagine something crazy. It will be 10 to 15 pages. You submit this to your verifier, you get the assessment report, and within next year, if you visit an EU port, the port state control will simply request to have this attestation from your verifier, nothing else. The first reporting period for vessels below 5,000 GT will be 2025, next year. You have until the 31st of March 2026 to submit the first set of annual emissions data to your verifier. Your verifier will then proceed until 30th of June to verify this data, and they will issue the so-called MRV document of compliance. This is the piece of paper that you will need to have on board after June 2026, and this is the paper that the port state control will request. Nothing more. If you have a valid document of compliance, nothing else will be requested from the vessel. It means that you will have undergone the whole process, and this document of compliance will be annually endorsed following the submittal of annual data. So every year, you go through this process. You submit your data, the verifier verifies it, and gives you the document of compliance, which is the piece of paper that the port state control will check. Okay, the port state control will not check to read your monitoring plan. It will not check and request your data that you have submitted. It would simply request this DOC. Yes. This is how the thing already works since 2018. So we know all this. We have seen how the port state control reacts. We have seen what happens with EU port state control. Nothing to be afraid of. You simply have to have a valid DOC. What happens if you don't? This is the question. What happens if you don't? I know nothing about MRV. I've never heard of ETS. And next year I'm going to Europe for the first time. Happens. Okay, maybe happens. You have 2 months from the first call at an EU port in order to go through this process, to prepare your MRV plan, to choose a verifier, to give it, to be assessed, etc., etc. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like your vessel is going to be detained. Okay. What happens if I get caught twice without a valid DOC? Then it's serious. They may ban the vessel from every EU port. Okay. So, what is the deadline? The first deadline is end of this year. What should we consider? First of all, the very basic choice from my experience, because we prepare monitoring plans and I've seen all the verifiers, whatever you can imagine, not only class, but whatever. Choose your verifier wisely. What does it mean? To be experienced, first of all. Cost is a factor, but also responsiveness. You know shipping, things happen all the time. Okay, there are always problems. They have to be there to assist you. What happens if I go to a port state controller who's crazy, a guy in Italy who wants to see, I don't know, who wants a specific statement? The verifier should be there to assist you. Okay. Usually, most shipping companies tend to go to their RO. So the same classification society who issues their DOC to be also their verifier. My suggestion is get at least 2-3 offers. My experience says that there are a few classification societies who are lacking resources and they are very difficult to move. They are always late with their verification. You always have to chase them in order to get your DOC on time. So get another offer. See how quick you get your offers. This is a very first indication. Whoever replies first is usually the one who is more responsive when you need them. Okay. You can go not only to classification societies, you can also go to other organizations who are accredited under an EU member state, such as there's a French company called Verifavia, for example. They mostly employ Indians. Okay, not so good experience with them. There's a Greek company called Emisyon, more than 500 vessels each year. Very good. There are also some other guys in Greece who are also doing this as well. The key is to be accredited, to be responsive, and not to be too expensive. Okay, these are the three things. The second of all, we need to be reporting every year, so we need the system in place. Now, usually when somebody starts with MRV and has a fleet of, let's say, less than 20 vessels, okay, because if you have 100 vessels, you have to have a platform, otherwise you lose everything. But for smaller fleets, less than 20 vessels, a good idea to start would be a simple Excel file. You give to your captain. At the end of each voyage, he notes down the ROBs, the distance, the cargo, one row per voyage. How many voyages will he have? 20, 30? Okay, it's not such a big deal. At the end of the year, you have a completed Excel that automatically generates the reporting format required for your verifier. So you simply do a check. You make sure that there are no negative consumptions or negative distances or whatever. You give to your verifier, end of story. So the reporting system is the basis for this. Keep in mind that if I purchase a new vessel that most probably will visit an EU port in the future, apart from all the other manuals that I will have to prepare, so PEP, garbage, whatever, I will also have to prepare an EU monitoring plan. So this will become also one extra manual for the vessels. Okay. Now, after so many years of experience, I've seen that this is very basic, and this will save you a lot of panic. Don't leave everything until the end of the year. The best strategy is to review and check the data from the vessel every at least 3 months. If you leave everything until the end of the year and you have 5, 6 vessels with 30 voyages each, it's a headache for one person to check. And usually at a shipping company where we lack resources, I don't think that anybody has a team dedicated to reporting emissions. It will be one person. He may need some assistance. So it's better to split it throughout the year. So don't expect the vessel to give you 100% fantastic data at the end of the year, and that's it. No, you will have to be on top, especially in the beginning. Follow this up every 3 months. Make sure that the vessel correctly reports the data. Make sure that the vessel actually reports something, because at the end, you know, it's a new thing for them as well. Eh? They're not used to reporting emissions. And I've seen this many times. So imagine you send the monitoring plan on board, you send the certificates on board, something gets lost, the master changes, the chief officer changes, and you end up at the end of the year and you have 0. You have nothing. So don't leave this for the end of the year. Now, this is the trickiest part. Finding the right person. Greek shipowners usually tend to leave this, to assign this to the technical department. And usually they try to find not a superintendent because he will be on board and abroad all the time, but let's say a technical assistant of some sort that will have as part of his or her duties to monitor this data every 3 months, every month, whatever. Okay. There are other companies that have a dedicated department for energy efficiency, for ESG, for all this part of things. But these are larger companies, and they have all the, ESG reporting for the banks. They are used to this. So I would suggest that you assign a dedicated person, train them, make them read the monitoring plan, make them be in contact with the verifier. They will have to do the reporting. They will have to collect all the information from the vessel. They will have to check that everything is in order before submitting. But please dedicate one person. Okay, don't dedicate to a department who one is going for spares, the other one is abroad, the other one is due to dry dock, and you cannot find anybody. It has to be one person. It has to be one person. I would suggest that you choose one person. Okay, this is an example of the form that we use in many companies. I know that you cannot read it well. You will have a better resolution in your PDF files that we will send. How this works. Every row is a voyage. Okay, so the first white shaded cells, columns, are ports, times, and distances. So this is master info. Okay. Then we have the yellow columns. This is chief engineer info, the ROBs. Forget about the blue. This is just for NOx emissions. The orange at the end is bunkering info. The important thing is that we have to differentiate between types of fuel. And this is not the types of fuel that we're used to. We have three categories. Why? Because this is what the regulation says. And because these types of fuels have to do with carbon content and not sulfur content. So forget about VLSFO. We have HFO, which is heavy fuel oil, LFO, which is light fuel oil, and diesel gas oil. Diesel gas oil, okay, it's easy. What is heavy and light? The regulation says that heavy and light are specific grades according to ISO 8217. Grades RMA through RMD, etc., etc. At the end of the day, what I want you to remember is that the heavy fuel oils are the ones that have a kinematic viscosity above 180 centistoke. Light fuel oils are the ones below 80. In Russia, you get a lot below 80, for example. It doesn't matter whether it's a VLSFO or HSFO. It doesn't have to do with sulfur content. You may have a VLSFO that's heavy fuel oil. You may have the same VLSFO that's light. It doesn't have to do with sulfur content. So below 80 centistoke, we have LFO, light fuel oil. Okay. We were discussing about penalties earlier. Let's break it down. So, first of all, if you arrive at an EU port without a valid DOC for MRV, then you have 2 months within which you need first to develop, submit, and verify the monitoring plan. And since you already have, if you already have last year an EU voyage, you need to do the verification as well. Okay. So that leaves you 2 months. As we said, the port control will only check that the vessel holds a valid document of compliance. Until June 2026, each vessel, each general cargo ship below 5,000 GT will have to have a valid statement saying that the verifier has assessed the monitoring plan, that the procedures are okay. Okay. If a ship fails to comply for 2 or more consecutive reporting periods, I have a vessel, I go to the EU, the year ends, I submit nothing. The next year I also go to Europe, I again submit nothing, and I go to Europe, and the port controller comes up and says, what's going on? For 2 years you've been to Europe, you've never submitted anything. Expulsion order. The vessel gets banned from EU port. Not the shipping company, the vessel. Okay, the shipping company has no penalty. The vessel will be banned. Okay. So, Before we do a quick break, let's sum up the basic steps. First of all, go and choose a verifier wisely. Cost, experience, responsiveness. These are the main three characteristics. As soon as you choose the verifier, then they will guide you through the Tschlis platform. What is the Tschlis platform? All this information that you submit every year for each vessel is public. I can now go online and see for a specific IMO number how many CO2 were emitted last year for EU voyages. Because the EU wants everything to be public. They want to be held accountable. For this to work, you have to have a platform. So what happens is, I give my information, my data every year to the verifier. He says, okay, correct this, correct that, then we are okay. And what I have to do at the end of the year is to put the aggregate number, the total numbers, the sums, to the so-called Tschlis platform. How does this work? It's like e-banking. It's very simple. They have a platform. You go online, you register your company, you register your vessels, and every year, in this platform, both you and the verifier have access. So they say, okay, this vessel with IMO number X has emitted 1,000 tons of CO2. You go into Tschlis platform, you say, you write 1,000 tons of CO2, and the verifier goes and there in the platform and says verified. And this information goes to EMSA, the European Maritime Safety Agency, and becomes public. So every citizen of the world can actually see what are the total emissions, the total annual emissions of your vessel. Okay, this is not such a critical information in any case, because this is just a number and it only has to do with EU voyages, not total voyages. Okay. So the second step is to register yourself. The verifier will guide you through this. There are extensive tutorials and guidelines on the internet. Very straightforward and easy. You do it once and you're finished. And every single new vessel that you purchase will also have to be registered in this platform. Okay. Then you need to prepare your procedures. Prepare the MRV monitoring plans for all vessels that might call an EU port. Okay, if you're not sure, better do it than run at the last minute. If you're 100% sure that the vessel will never visit an EU, forget about all this. Okay. The fourth step is get ready to report. How? Assigning the proper person and establishing a reporting system. How will you gather this information? It has to be a robust system. It has to be a specific form. I would suggest an Excel sheet. So all this needs to be set up from day one. Instead of getting this piece of information from the captain, getting this other, and having this guy come all together, and then this guy leaves, and I'm left with nothing. So it has to be an in-house system. Okay. Now, we will do a short break to go into ETS, because all this, you report your emissions. Why do you report your emissions? In order that at the end of the day, you will pay for it. Okay. There is a projection that from 2027, these vessels will be under ETS. So we will see also what ETS stands for. And this is what we will discuss, the other steps. How to purchase, what to do with charterers, and what the strategy will be for purchasing. After the break. 15 minutes, please. Thank you. So let me clarify one thing, because I understand it's not 100% clear to all of you. The European regulation currently in force states that only general cargo ships as per class certificate and offshore vessels between 400 and 5,000 GT will need to comply with MRV next year. Okay, is this clear? So if your class certificate says general cargo ship and your gross tonnage is between 400 and 5,000, you need to start preparing the MRV plan, choose your verifier, etc., etc. Okay. If you're a container vessel or a tanker or an LPG carrier, forget about all this. Okay, there's no EU requirement for these types of vessels below 5,000 GT. It only applies to all vessels above 5,000 GT. Okay, so what's next? Let's discuss about this big dragon called ETS. What is ETS? What is this emission trading? Is it a tax? No, it's not a tax. What is it? So, what happens is the EU issues allowances. Consider them as permits to emit CO2. These allowances are issued almost every week under auction where only the energy companies participate. Okay, right now, the available allowances out there are roughly 500 million, corresponding to 500 million tons of CO2. Every week, the EU comes out and says, all of you energy companies come here, we have 10 million to issue. And they do an auction, and the energy companies take these allowances. Actually, if you participate in these auctions, this is the best price you can find for 1 ton of CO2. It's usually less than what the market value is. And then these energy companies, they give out these allowances to the secondary market. What is a secondary market? The secondary market is the ICE exchange in London and the energy exchange in Amsterdam, where everybody, you and me, can go and buy them. They become commodities, like any other commodity, like oil, like gas, like currency, like gold, like grain, like steel. They become a commodity that is traded. And as all other commodities, you get all the products, like derivatives. Okay. So the European emission trading scheme makes you not pay a tax, but to go out and purchase something that is traded in the exchange market. Why do they do that? And why does it work? Because it works. Imagine the IMO comes out tomorrow and says, for every fuel oil out there, for every ton, I put a flat tax of $50. What will happen? Immediately, you will pass the cost to the charterer will pass it on to the end consumer. Will it give you any incentive to decarbonize? Will it give any incentive to any stakeholder in the chain to decarbonize? No, they will simply pass the cost to the end consumer. What is the difference between ETS and a flat tax? The difference is the psychology. Because all these companies already inside the ETS, energy companies, cement factories, airplane companies, they live under the fear that tomorrow morning I will wake up and the price will be double. So I have to do something. So it creates this artificial incentive to always have in mind that I have to do that and I don't know what the cost will be. It might be double next year. Just let me give you an example. The public power company of Greece, which is one of the smallest in Europe. 4 years ago, do you know how many tons of CO2 were emitted by this small public power company? 14 million. This is actually twice the total of shipping in EU voyages. Okay, that was 4 years ago. They were paying close to €1 billion per year for ETS. 1 billion euros. You can imagine the scale. What did they do? They switched to alternatives. They switched to solar panels, they switched to wind farms, they switched to whatever they could. They bought a company in Romania providing clean energy. Last year, they fell from 14 million to 10. Next year, the projection is that they're going to fall to 8. This is why ETS works. This is exactly what they're trying to achieve. This is exactly the goal of ETS, to force all the major polluters to reduce their footprint. Okay. Now, being in the stock market means that this thing that we will be forced to purchase, to buy, the EUAs, the allowances, are under a supply and demand market. Meaning that if the major players, like the energy companies, reduce their footprint, that means that the demand will fall. That means that we will also pay less because the price will fall. Okay? This is how it works. It guides the money to where it matters. So, on the one hand, you have something that is traded, so it is subject to supply and demand, thereby making us benefit from that, although we do not reduce our emissions, but the big players will. And on the other hand, they gather the money to give the money where? Do you know where ETS money goes in Europe? This is very interesting, actually.
Environmental investments?
I'm actually buying a house next year, okay? And I'm buying a house with a heat pump. And I will get 5,000 euros from the government subsidy, which is ETS money, to install a heat pump. Why? Because it's zero CO2. Do you know how much more do houses emit in Europe compared to shipping? 10 times more, 20 times more, 100 times more. This is where the money goes to. So what they're doing is, again, two things. First of all, they're making it harder for fossil fuels because the minute you have fuel oil on board, you have emissions, you have to pay. And on the other hand, they are guiding the money where it most matters. So they, after 15 years, they have already determined in their mind who are the big players, who are the big emitters, and where it is easier with the money they make to reduce emissions. Because, let's be real, we have close to 14,000 ships visiting EU ports every year. Do you know how hard it is, how much money it would cost to make these 14,000 ships zero emission? We're talking about billions. Is it clever for them to gather all this money for ETS and give it to shipping? No. It's better to give it to the public power company to invest in wind farms, to invest in, for example, money from ETS went to a very nice project in Switzerland. You know what they did? They have two lakes. The one is higher than the other. So they build hydroelectric project. When they have surplus of alternative energy, they simply pump the water to the higher lake. And during the winter, where there's a deficit of alternative energy available, they simply open the dam, the water goes down to the lower lake, and they get electricity from it. It's like a big battery. And they spent 500 million on this. And this gives power to 500,000 homes. This is where the money goes. And this is why we say that Europe is a pioneer, because they have already been through the whole discussion of whether we should tax carbon and how we should tax carbon. They have already tried alternatives. They have ended up with ETS. It works. They have reduced emissions throughout Europe. And now they say, okay, shipping, it's your turn. It's as simple as that. There's nothing else behind. The bad thing is that by doing this, they reduce the competitiveness of Europe. This is a bit political, but what they're now trying is to increase competitiveness because they know that the industries in Europe have, through this, a disadvantage because they are paying. They're not yet net zero, so they are still paying. So they have an extra cost that everybody else doesn't have. But anyway, they are investing in this. It might leave us as Europe behind the rest of the world in terms of competitiveness. China, for example, is investing in coal mines and coal factories, etc. You know all this coal that's going to China. On the other hand, they are the only ones that are doing really something. Okay, at least it's something. So how this works is the European Union issues the allowances, the energy companies take it, you are forced to do what every year? To surrender the allowances. The European Union does not care where you get them from, when you get them, and at which price you buy, because having done the auctions, they have already taken their money. By the time you have to purchase the allowance to surrender them, the European Union had their money maybe 2 or 3 years before. So the only thing that the regulation asks you to do is to surrender the allowances. This is the whole game, to surrender the allowances. They don't care where you got them from, they don't care when, they just have a date and you have to surrender the allowances. And we'll explain how this works. So with this whole thing, the one industry who pollutes less actually has an advantage because they pay less tax. Okay. Let's see it more in more practical ways. Sorry, I always mix this up. So, as we said, ETS is part of the Fit for 55 package, meaning the European Union has set a goal to reduce CO2 emissions by 55% until 2030. Right now, ETS applies to vessels above 5,000 GT. As we said, since they have already decided to put general cargo ships below 5,000 GT in MRV, most likely they do this so that these vessels will also have to comply in the future with ETS. The projection, the guess that we have in our hands, the information that we have is they're thinking of making it mandatory for these vessels from 1st January 2027. Meaning 2025, 2026 only reporting, 2027 reporting and ETS onwards. Okay, so you guys will actually have 2 years in order to put all these tests, report, etc., get familiar with it, and then you will have to start paying. For the larger vessels right now, there is a so-called phase-in period. So we said 2028, vessels above 5,000 GT were required to report, be under the MRV. 2024, ETS, first year, but you will have to surrender 40% of the total allowances due. So if you emit 1,000 tons of CO2, you will have to surrender 400 tons, 400 EUAs. 1 EUA equals 1 ton of CO2. Okay. 2025, this will be increased to 70%, and from 2026 onwards, 100. But, there's also a but. We're talking about all voyages to, from, or between EU ports. So, what happens? Is there, this is the most common question I get, is there any geographical scope? Is there any limit after which I go inside, oh, I have to pay ETS? No, it doesn't work like this. It works like wherever you come from, if you discharge or load cargo at an EU port, this voyage will be taxed at 50%. So if you emit 1,000 tons, you will have to surrender the 500 tons. This applies to all voyages to or from an EU port. But if you are between EU ports, then 100%. If you are at EU berth, also the consumption at EU berth, while berth, will be taxed at 100%. The cost of 1 ton of CO2, 1 ton of CO2 right now is at 70, I think I checked it yesterday, 71 euros. Okay. We will see later on, historically speaking, the highest price was 101 euros per ton. 2 months ago, it was at 50. It's very volatile. all the projections by various analysts and all the traders involved with ETS say that the peak will be around 120 euros to 140 euros per ton. When will this peak and how will this peak? We will discuss it later on about the market and how it works. But just to give you a rough idea, don't forget, 1 ton of fuel emits how many tons of CO2, roughly? Anybody? 3.2. 1 ton of fuel emits 3.2 tons of CO2. 1 ton of CO2 is 70 euros. Okay, but you have to multiply by 50% if we're talking about to or from EU, and by 40% for the phase-in period. Why don't we do an example here? You remember this from before the break, eh? You remember? You remember? Power. So, we have this voyage. Let's imagine this voyage was 2,000 tons of CO2. It's from outside Europe to Europe, okay? So it's at 50%. So we have 1,000 tons of CO2 from this voyage. And the second one is intra-EU, 100%, all right? Another 500 tons. How much does this cost right now and how much will it cost? So 1,500 tons multiplied by 40% because of the phase-in for this year, by 70% for next year. That means 42,000 for this year. From 2026, these two voyages, 105,000 euros. Okay, it's a lot of money. It's not something negligible. Yes? I would prefer at the end, I would say that you note, and we can go back in the slide. Okay.
I want to ask, is there any preventive measure? For example, when the vessel go from Shanghai to...
The classic question, to stop in the middle, unload 1 ton? Yes. Listen, you have to understand something. The EU guys are not dumb. They're not stupid. So, they have done all the studies. And they say, no, believe me. They say, okay, tankers. What do the tankers do? Ship-to-ship OPL in Malta. So you avoid this because OPL, outside port limits, there's no voyage, you avoid this. But it actually costs them more to transport the oil from Malta to mainland. So it... Wait for me. I was going to container. Why? Are you in a hurry? You have an appointment, something? Or... So, for tankers, they have already made the study, and they know it is not efficient for the charterers to do that. So, it's not worth their money. Okay, for the bulk carriers, what can you do? You will unload 1 ton of grain where? It's ridiculous. So, it doesn't happen. For the containers, they said, we have Algiers, we have some ports in the Mediterranean that will actually produce, this is the term they use, carbon leakage. They will also reduce the competitiveness of European ports. Very easy solution, already in place. They have therefore applied the so-called transshipment area, an area 300 miles from Europe, and every port within this transshipment area is considered as an EU port. So, if you discharge 1 container in Algeria, it counts as being within Europe, so they don't lose anything. They are way ahead of us. Even if somebody else finds a window and they come out and they find a clever way to overcome this, within every 2 years there's a review of ETS. They will simply change the regulation and put another preventive measure to avoid this. Okay, this is a very common question.
When we report, we can report for MRV between Algeria to Spain.
As I said, the verifier is also not stupid because they are checking AIS data. So they know that the vessel has visited Algeria. You will not, at the end of the day, the answer is simple. Forget about trying to beat the system. You will not be able to do that. Many have tried, all have failed. Believe me. Okay. I've heard all these questions many times. That's what I'm saying. So, By the way, we have also we have developed a free ETS calculator where you can simply input the IMO number of the vessel. This applies, of course, for vessels above 5,000 GT. Again, don't take photos. We will send you the PDF. You will have everything there. Don't worry about it. We have all the data from the Thetis database, which is public. So you can simply search with an IMO number, and you get the emissions every year for each vessel. Okay. And it also does some projection based on the actual cost of ETS. Now, this is where it starts to get complicated. So please pay attention. Who is responsible for ETS? Okay. This is not the usual shipping regulation, where you have one entity, the DOC holder, who is responsible, that's the end of the story. Because this is a big cost, all the third-party managers, Vestships, Columbia, Bernard Schulte, whatever, they said, why should we, as DOC holders, have the liability of ETS? I have owners who have not paid me the management fees for 3 years, and I will be liable for the penalty of ETS if they don't pay me. So they said, okay, it can either be two things. It can either be the DOC holder, the ship manager, or the register owner. But, they say, whoever is responsible to pay for ETS, to surrender the allowances, will also have to be the same exact entity who will also be responsible for MRV. So whoever reports should be the same one who surrenders. So if it is the register owner, because all third-party managers at the end, they threw the ball to the register owner. So the owners have to surrender the allowances. They will have to open the holding account, which we will see, etc., etc. But they will also have to be the ones responsible for reporting. And this is where it gets tricky, because usually the owner does not have a big team and has the capability of monitoring and reporting and all this stuff and platforms, etc. So we've seen many, because we have many clients who are either owners or third-party managers. And we've seen how difficult this can be. Now, the advantage of your shipping company is that they are mostly owners, operators, and managers, correct? This is a good thing, because you will have full control. So for your case, the manager will be responsible, the DOC holder. This will be the company that everybody in the system of MRV and ETS will see. They will be the ones paying for the EUAs. They will be the ones doing the charter party agreements. They will be the ones that will take money from the charterers. They will be the ones that will have the holding account, and they will be the ones responsible for reporting for MRV. Okay. Is there anybody here who has an owner, third-party manager relationship? Nobody? Great. That's the easiest route. Okay. You are lucky, believe me. So, how does this work? Practically speaking, it is a complicated process. As soon as you open, the first step is to open the account in Thetis MRV. So you put your DOC holding company, your managing company up front for all the vessels under management, and you register in Thetis. That means that the European system knows this company now. It's like opening an account with a European bank. The whole of Europe knows this company. Okay. The next step is to have an official document, a mandate, this is how they call it, between owner and manager, relaying the responsibility for ETS to the manager. It's like an extension of the management agreement you already have. The owner simply says, for my ship, I put the manager responsible to pay, to handle, to surrender the EUAs. Okay. The basic thing, though, is that throughout this regulation, there is the polluter pays principle. Why? Because the Union of Greek Ship Owners, as part of the European Ship Owners Association, managed to put this inside so that the owner is not responsible for the cost, which is a lot of money. So for every vessel under time charter agreement, the charterer should pay. But that's all the regulation says. It doesn't specify how and when and everything. It leaves it up to the industry to decide this. And this has already been in place. As we will see later on, BIMCO was the first to publish an EU ETS charter party clause. There are currently 4 different differentiations of this form, depending on what the charter party agreement is. Of course, there are many other clauses out there. Most probably for general cargo vessels, BIMCO clause will be 99% what you will follow, because this is what 99% of the bulk carrier industry follows. Only the tankers have different forms. Because why? Because the tanker charters, the oil majors, are very advanced and they have a better view of how the game is played because they are traders and they know about trading commodities like oil and gas. Don't forget, EUAs is actually commodities. EU allowance is a commodity that is traded. I will show you some examples later on to understand how this works. Who is the tax authority behind all this? Who will chase me to surrender the allowances? These guys, not the anonymous alcoholic AA, the administering authority. The administering authority is an EU member state ministry. In Greece, it is the Ministry of Environment that have already been doing this job for all the other industries. They have zero idea about shipping. They do not know what a shipping company is. They do not know what a bareboat charterer is. Actually, the Greek guys know now because we taught them. But usually these are just some public servants, very hard to get on the phone, very hard to communicate. They are the ones who will send us an email saying, where are the EUAs? You have to surrender. Now, every shipping company for vessels above 5,000 GT is already assigned to an administering authority based on 2 things. Based on country of registration, if within the EU, so all Greek shipping companies are assigned to the Greek ministry, the Greek administration authority, or if outside the EU, based on the most frequent port calls of their vessels over the last 4 years. Now, this is another reason why they will first make you comply with MRV and then after 2 years make you comply with ETS, to get the information to see where you belong. So they will most probably assign you to where your vessels most frequently call. If your vessels are calling Greece more frequently, they will assign you to the Greek administering authority. And you will be extra lucky because the Greek administering authority happens to be the fastest and the best. The Spanish and the German are the worst. If you can, it's true. I know it's weird, but it's true. So, for all vessels above 5,000 GT, the EU has already published a list saying, your company belongs to Spain, your company belongs to Greece, etc., etc. The same will happen with the smaller vessels. Okay, so at the end of the day, you know where you belong. Why is this important? Because the next thing to do is this: purchase and surrender allowances. Now, we said that the whole goal of ETS is for you to surrender the allowances. That's what the EU cares for, nothing else. For you to surrender the allowances. Where do I get my allowances from? Allowances can be purchased through the European Energy Exchange, but this is a stock market. If I want to buy stocks, I cannot go directly to the stock market. I have to get a trader. The same applies here. So, how many traders we have? We have 3 sources. As shipping companies, we have 3 sources to purchase allowances from. The first is the banks. Now, Turkish banks I don't think they are very familiar with EUA trading. Most probably, you will tell them, I want to purchase EUAs, and they will say, what? What is that? Do you want some loans or something? It's not their core business. They do not make so much money out of it. There are a few banks that we've seen, especially in the Greek market, being very strong with EUAs. For example, Berenberg. Do you know Berenberg? Yeah. Okay. But you have to be careful with them. They have various tricks to make money out of you. For example, they say, okay, you don't have an account yet, so I cannot transfer the EUAs. I will keep them in escrow, but I will charge you. Okay. If you go to the trader, they will say, not only I will not charge you, I will give you interest. Because it's like money. Imagine if I were to put my money in a bank and I have to pay them to keep them. Okay, there's an interest. It's an asset. EU allowances are an asset. Okay, so they have various tricks. The second source are the brokers. I'm selling oil. I come to you and say, you take the fuel oil from me. You want some EUAs also? I can take. What they are doing is they are buying from traders and they're putting a commission. Okay, so the third source, the traders, the ones who are buying directly from the energy exchange, are the ones that are most preferred by Greek shipping companies. And there are 15 to 20 traders out there. What they do is it's like a stock market. They purchase the stock and they give you and they have a small commission. Usually the commissions that we've seen are in the range of 5 to 10 cents per ton of CO2 for 1,000 tons and above. Okay, just to give you an idea. It's not €1 per ton. That's crazy. Okay, 5 to 10 cents. Why are they better? Because this is their core business. That's all they do. These guys sell only EUAs, nothing else. Okay, and UKAs, because there's also the UK ETS. They sell only carbon credits. They are very familiar. They have a lot of products set up around them. For example, I have 1,000 tons of CO2 in my account right now. Okay, one scenario. I have to surrender them next year. I have a year to surrender them. Why not take an interest? So what I do is I give it to the trader, and he gives me back 1,060 tons. Okay, because they take advantage of this. They trade it and they make a lot of money. These are not poor guys, by the way. These Ether guys, I know this, they are Italian. We're talking about 40 guys in an office in Switzerland. Do you know how much income they make every year? 40 guys, 5 billion euros. It's crazy. So there's a whole industry behind all this. We're just getting a glimpse of it. But this has been working for 15 years, don't forget. Okay, so everything is already set up. Now, how and when to surrender allowances? The regulation says that the deadline for surrendering allowances is 30th of September each year. This applies to everyone. Energy companies, factories, aviation, shipping, everything, they all need to surrender allowances by 30th of September for the previous year. Okay, so I go through MRV, I submit my data by March, I get the verification by June, and I have to surrender by September, every 3 months. You see how nice it is? Okay, so even if it's August and I have done nothing, I still have time to purchase the allowances and surrender them. Nobody will tell me anything. If I have a voyage within EU right now, and I'm a vessel above 5,000 GT, and the charterer gives me the EUAs or gives me money, I can simply store in my account. And what happens? What does surrendering allowances mean? It means that I have the allowances in my account, and the administrating authority comes and simply takes it from my account. This is what surrendering looks like. There is a dedicated account under the administering authority. I put the credits inside, 30th of September, they are vanished. Okay, if I put more, then only the difference remains. The European Union will simply extract the exact amount I owe every year. Is it clear? This is how it works. This is what surrendering allowances means. Okay. Now, let's be a little more visual. So we have the auction to power companies. This gets then to the secondary market. There are three sources which give out all the allowances for all the players, the mandatory buyers. The mandatory buyers. Are they the only players? No, of course not. It's an open market. This is why the price is going up and down all the time. Because these are not the only guys that participate. I can open an account and I can invest in carbon credits. There are big funds inside. Every player you can imagine, every speculator you can imagine is there. This is why the price is going up and down. What is the key in the whole process? The so-called MOHA. This is the Maritime Operator Holding Account. Remember this. You will most probably will need it in the near future. This is actually the account from where the administrating authority every 30th of September will grab the EUAs. This is the destination of all EUAs. This is where they end up. Okay. So every shipping company will definitely need at least one account. All vessels that the company manages will be under this account. Yes? If the charter, this depends on your agreement with the charterer. The charterer usually in the ETS clauses has two alternatives. Either give you directly the EUAs for the subject voyage, or give you the money for you to purchase the allowances. If he were to give you allowances directly, where will you put them elsewhere? You have to have a MOHA. If he gives you money, then you can wait until you open the MOHA, then you go and purchase and you can put them inside. Or you can do another thing. You can also open a trading account. The trading account gives you flexibility because a trading account can be opened also outside an administering authority. You can open a trading account at the bank. Okay, but it's not mandatory. This one is. At the end of the day, the MOHA is where the allowances will end up, regardless of whether you have a trading account or not. You have to have a MOHA at the end of the day. Okay? No. Charterers cannot have a MOHA. This is only for shipping companies. This is why it's called Maritime Operator Holding Account. This is where you store your EUAs. This is where the EU gets your EUAs from. The charterer will have a trading account. He cannot have anything else. So charterers have a trading account. Shipping companies definitely will have a MOHA. They can also have a trading account for flexibility reasons. Why? Because you can trade through that. You can actually sell the EUAs to others. You can store them here, and you can have this trading account in a bank, wherever you want. But a MOHA can only be opened by a shipping company and can only be opened in your administering authority, nowhere else. And it's mandatory. Okay? Is it clear? Owners are requesting MOHA account from you guys?
Yeah, owners are asking MOHA account of charter, so we are trying to explain to them, guys, this is not related with us, so we will transfer, let's say, carbon credit allowance directly
to your MOHA.
writing
What is the nationality of these owners?
Sorry to say that sometimes it's Greek.
It's Greek, eh? They don't know yet. That's why. They don't know yet. I haven't been there to train them, that's why. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Of course. Of course. Yeah, yeah. This MOHA, what is it? It's just an EUA and 11 digits. It's just an IBAN number. Okay, that's the MOHA. And the MOHA is an IBAN number. So, as soon as you want to transfer to somebody allowances, you simply need this number. It can either be a trading account or a MOHA. You can transfer to wherever you want. But a shipping company definitely needs a MOHA. Okay, because they are the ones who need to surrender. You cannot surrender without a MOHA. The charterers do not need to surrender, so they don't open a MOHA for them. Even a person with a European VAT number can open a trading account. I can open a trading account right now. And I have very seriously been tempted. And I should have, because I was thinking when the price was at 50. And now it's 75. Fuck it. Anyway. So, as we said, the trading account is voluntary. Okay. Now, what happens with non-compliance? This is the legal aspect, because this is the big liability. First of all, whoever doesn't surrender on time gets published. So it's public information. You know that this owner has not surrendered the allowances. Second, the penalty you pay will be 100 euros per ton on top of the price. So you will still need to go out, purchase the allowances, surrender them, and plus pay a penalty of 100 euros per ton. It's a lot of money. I remember in the early days when I was discussing this thing, I was new to this. I didn't know anything. So I got in contact with a trader in Greece. His clients were the public power company, Hellenic Petroleum, Titan Cement, Sky Express, Aegean Airlines, you know. And I told him, has anybody ever not paid? And he told me that even companies under bankruptcy, due to this penalty, they prefer to pay the EUAs and avoid paying the tax authorities. Imagine. It's a very heavy penalty. There was a Greek company that owed some EUAs, okay, but they were under bankruptcy. They were owing everybody. The only thing they paid was the EUAs because to avoid this extra penalty. Now, in case a shipping company fails to surrender the allowances for 2 consecutive reporting periods, then the vessel gets banned from an EU port. Okay. So it's a rather strict thing. Now, as we said, EUA price, and this is the nice part of the presentation now for guys interested with financial stuff, okay, is determined by supply and demand. Okay, let's break this down. What do we know about demand? Demand is 2 things. The mandatory buyers, guys like shipping companies, aviation companies, power companies that need to surrender the allowance. So these are the mandatory buyers. They have to, by law, buy. And the speculators, as I like to call them. All the other guys who are interested in investing. From the simple fact that shipping enters this bucket of EUAs, so there's another hand coming in, demand will increase. What about supply? Supply is limited by law, every year reduced by 2.2%. Why? Because this is the target. That's what we want to do. We want to reduce emissions, right? So the supply, the available allowances are reduced every year. So the bucket, with all the hands, everybody's buying from the same bucket. Aviation is buying from the same bucket. And this bucket becomes smaller every year. Okay. However, this, don't forget this, this is a small market. It is not like a 10 trillion market. It's not like oil. So it is very volatile. EUAs are considered a very risky asset because all the players, the big players like funds, etc., they can corner the market easily. So they can push the prices up and down and make a lot of money out of this. So it is a very volatile market. And just to give you an image of how this works, these are the last 4 years. Okay, 2020, around 20 euros per ton. As we said, last summer, historical high, 101 euros per ton. And do you see this very big dip here, beginning of 22? What happened there? From 90 to 60. Ukraine. So this is also affected by recession fears, by global events, and follows other commodities. It is more closely correlated with gas prices, usually. But it also follows its own ups and downs. So what can you say about this? Maybe say, don't touch it. You know, it's very risky. Yes, but why do all projections say that it will reach 120, 140? Because of the two basic things that we said. Demand is increasing and supply is reducing by law. When will it reach its peak? It will reach a peak when the major players, who are the power companies, don't forget the power companies are the biggest percentage. They will switch to alternative by that much that demand will decrease. So if we see public power companies in Europe having 70, 80% of energy from renewables, that means that the price will start to go down. Will this happen next year or the year after? Most probably not. Most probably it will continue to rise until 2027, 8, 9, something like that. Okay, so this is what we say. If you are an owner and the charterer gives you money for you to purchase the allowances, don't wait. Go out and purchase. Otherwise, you have the risk of buying at a higher price, meaning the difference will come from your pocket. And why should you have this risk? As soon as the money hits your account, go out and purchase the allowances. That way, you make sure that you don't lose money. This is the most conservative approach. Okay. There are three things to keep in mind for this market. First of all, supply is limited. Second, demand is increasing. And third, most people don't pay so much attention to this, but it's the only commodity out there that has mandatory buyers. If I had 1,000 tons of CO2, I know that I will find somebody to sell it to. Why? Because this guy needs to purchase to surrender. Okay, it's the only thing that has mandatory buyers. This is also what keeps it steadily growing. So, I was thinking of another break, but this time, let's make it 10 minutes. What do you think? To finish on time, because it's taken us more. Okay, 10 minutes. Buddy from the chartering department here. Any chartering okay. One, only one. Nobody else from the chartering department? Two? Three? Almost half. I don't see any other hands. Anyway, this is for you now, this last part. Okay, because we discussed about how the charterer is supposed to cover the costs. What does this actually mean? So, the basis, the foundation of the agreement between charterer and owner to cover EU ETS cost is the BIMCO clause. What does it say? Throughout the charter party period, the charterer shall provide and pay for EUAs. Provide and pay. What does this translate to? That the charterer will choose whether they will give you money or EUAs directly. They have two options. Okay. Within 7 days or 14 or 30 days, we've seen this variation, of each month or delivery, owners shall notify charterers in writing regarding the quantity to be transferred or paid. And then charterers have another 7 or 14 or 30 days upon notification to transfer the amount. If we're talking about a long time period charter, the charterer will usually pay every month. Either money directly to the hire account based on a calculation from the owner, or if they request based on verified data, if we're talking about a voyage charter, at the end of the voyage, you do your calculations, you do your bills for the charterer, and the charterer will either give you money or give you the EUAs directly. Okay, owners will have to be prepared for both eventualities because what we've seen so far, both happen. We have clients, owners who have received for the same vessel both money from one charterer and EUAs directly from another one. Now, being in an owner's shoes, of course, it is much better to receive EUAs directly because you have your mind at ease, that you don't have to mess with the stock exchange to be careful of the prices. You have your mind at ease. You have your EUAs in your account. That's it. At the end of the day, 30th of September, you will simply transfer them. The EU will grab them. End of story. But it's always good to be prepared for both eventualities. The last part of the BIMCO clause, the last paragraph, includes the liability for charterers. Why? Because the owner is responsible to surrender the allowances. The owner will be liable for the penalty. What happens if the charterer does not give me the EUAs in place, on time? The last paragraph of the BIMCO clause says that if charterers fail to transfer the EUAs, the owners have the right to suspend the charter party until the EUAs are received in full. It's just a part to transfer some of the liability to charterers. Okay. This is the gist of the BIMCO clause. It's just 1 page long. It's very simple. This is the basic outline. This is how it goes. It does not specify the price. So if a charterer decides to give you money, because it's easier for him, because it's actually to their benefit, as we will see later on, the clause does not specify the price. So what happens in real life is you communicate with the charterer, you give them your calculations, and the charterer usually says, okay, what is the price right now, or what is the price of EUAs, future or EUA spot? You agree on a price, and he sends you the money. Okay. Of course, there are other charter party clauses, especially from oil majors. This is from ExxonMobil. It says in the clause that I will give you money as a charterer. End of story. I will explain why. And the price shall be the 10-day average starting on the first available market quote from the day a valid notice of readiness is tendered at the last discharge port of a voyage or a part of a voyage where emission scheme is applicable. Do you understand what this means? No. Let me translate. They say that as soon as you have the notice of readiness, within 10 days you get an average price, and this is the price we will give you. Okay. The market assessed quote is the end of day index of EEX EUA spot. This is something that you can Google online and see the price right now. This is not a price that stays for more than 14 seconds, 15 seconds. Okay, this price changes. This is why they say 10-day average. This price changes continuously. They also say that the charterers have the option to transfer EUAs, so they still keep the option to transfer EUAs, although the whole clause is structured for money. They also put this in, that we have the option to transfer EUAs directly if we want. if we have some amount stocked, within 60 days after the end of each calendar year or after owner providing verified emissions data, whatever. So this is one idea. Trafigura clause, a little bit different. EUAs or cash equivalent charterers option, strictly. The quantity of EUAs for which charterers are liable is 100% or 50% respectively as per world scale. So they tie it to world scale to avoid any confusion about how much the vessel actually consumed, etc. Very simple. They tie it to world scale. What about the price? The daily settlement price on charter party date as published by ICE Index for December front month EUA future. What is the EUA future? Now, as all commodities, the EUAs also have two different structural products. It's the EUA spot, meaning I go out and buy the product within 26 hours, it is in my account, in my MOHA account. There's also the EUA future. This is the derivative of EUA, the option of the EUA, meaning I will pay not the full price as I would do if it were spot. I pay 12% and I get the future of EUA. And I have the option to exercise, to purchase the actual product after 6 or 9 or 12 months. And I can roll it over. It works as any other derivative. If you're familiar with FFAs, it's exactly the same thing. It's not the actual EUA that I'm buying. It's the option of the EUA, the future. The future and the spot price have a difference roughly 1 to 1.5 euros. And the most liquid thing you can purchase is the EUA future for December every year. Okay. What do the big charterers do? The ones that are familiar with trading. They go out and purchase at a low price the EUA future for the entire year. This is why Trafigura has connected the value to the EUA future, because they have already purchased at 50 euros. Okay, so they know, and they have paid a rather small amount for this. So the whole OPEX issue is down the line. So they know what they have paid, and they can do their balance sheet quite beautifully with this clause. Okay, so it is to their benefit to give you money. Because what they do, and I will explain this in an example for you to understand, because it's rather complicated. Let's do an example. So imagine the current price is 75 euros, okay? And I have a voyage, 1,000 tons of CO2, August, okay? And the price in August is 90. Okay, so what I do as a charterer, I go out and buy at 90. What is the cost? 90,000 euros. Easy. I go out, buy spot, 90,000 euros, and I transfer the EUAs to the owner. That's the most straightforward thing. Okay. My cost as a charterer is 90 euros, 90,000 euros. Let's say now that the current price is 75. I go out and buy EUA futures now. I pay for 76 because it's always a little bit higher, the future, and I pay 7,600 euros and I buy 1,000 tons EUA futures. Okay. The voyage again, 1,000 tons in August. I sell my EUA futures. The price is 90 tons. I pay 76,000 in total because of the difference of the price. That means I pay later and less. So it's to my benefit to do that. But I have to be familiar with that. I have to follow the market. But don't forget, all these oil traders are very experienced traders. So they know this deal. This is why Trafigura says, the price I will pay you will be ICE EUA futures. Because they have already purchased. You see how they handle the whole game. It's entirely in their ballpark. They can do whatever they want. Owners, of course, do not have the luxury of having a desk of traders in Switzerland following up all the markets to do that. These guys do. Okay. But you have to know why it's to the charter's benefit to give you money at the end of the day. Most dry cargo charterers do not know this yet. That's why they give you UAs. At the end of the day, and also accounting for the fact that the phase-in period will end in 2 years, so they will be paying 2 and 3 times more. Imagine, we're talking about a single voyage with a difference of 14,000 plus paying later. Imagine if it were 100 million, this difference. It's a lot of money. Imagine a charterer that will have to give 200-300 million per year for ETS cost. This makes a huge difference for them. Also for their balance sheet, for accounting purposes. So as they start getting familiar, you as owners will be familiar. Don't forget that charters will become clever in ways to manage this cost, because at the end of the day, this cost is mostly to the charter's account. But, and there's a big but, let's go back a little bit to discuss about a thing that few can grasp. Okay, remember this voyage, huh? What if the voyage after Denmark, where the vessel is ballast, the vessel leaves and goes to load in Brazil? It's an EU voyage, right? 50%. And it's a big voyage to Brazil. It will be 100,000 euros easily. But the vessel is redelivered in Denmark. Who will pay for this voyage? Owner. So don't forget, despite the fact that the vessel was under time charter, in between the charters, this ballast voyage, I call it the redelivery voyage, will be at owner's account. Okay, so still, even if you have a vessel always under time charter, there may be cases that you will need to also pay for the EUAs directly. Okay, very basic thing. Which is another case that the owner will pay directly in case of any dispute. Let's say, for example, you have an underperformance claim or whatever. The vessel stops off hire for 2 days because of a problem. These 2 days, the charterer will say, why should I pay for these 2 days? Okay. So in any case, at the end of the day, the most likely scenario is at some point, you as owners will have to purchase allowances on your own. Okay. I'm sorry to say that, but it will happen. So be ready. It's a very simple thing. You find a trader, you make a telephone call, you say, what is the price, my friend? This is the price. Okay. An email, an invoice, you pay it, they simply transfer. It's like any other e-banking transaction. Okay, it's as simple as that. So, going back to, where were we? Here. So, discussing all this and doing an actual example shows you how much detail there is in this. It might appear complicated and everything, but believe me, if you are familiar with trading commodities, this is a piece of cake. It's a walk in the park. Okay. It's very easy for somebody who is experienced to see what is the proper strategy. We have a very, very risky asset, a very small liquidity market. We know that it's going up and down. There's a very high risk of losing money. What will the big players do? It's very simple. Either invest with EUA futures or do the simple strategy of average buying, meaning buying a little bit every month. That's what the big power companies do. They buy a little bit every month. If they see a huge dip in the market, they may buy twice this month and skip the next one. That's about it. This is the most conservative scenario. But of course, shipping companies are not big players. We're discussing about the Greek public power company, which is the smallest in Europe, for tens of millions of tons. An average shipping company with 5 to 10 vessels, maybe 2,000, 3,000 tons. The biggest I've seen, okay, the biggest shipping company, for example, Minerva Marine in Greece, have an average of 300,000 tons per year. Okay, but they have 122 vessels. They're huge. But for 20 vessels, it's close to 10 to 20,000 tons of EU. It's small. So there's no need to go for average buying. Can you follow the market? Can you allocate somebody from your office to do this? Of course not. There's a ton of other business to do. Find a good trader that you can pick up the phone, call him to advise you, to tell you, this is a good time, or this is a year to store EUAs, to buy. These guys are the ones who have the knowledge. These are the guys who are following the market. They are on top of the market. These are the guys you should ask. Okay. So, in terms of strategy for shipping companies, we know that they are the small fish in this business, meaning we will lose a lot of money out of this, because when you're a small fish, you lose money. These are the basic questions. First of all, do we know what the charters will do? Will they give us EUAs directly? If they do, that's it. I'm only worried about these redelivery voyages, nothing else. Okay, but if they give me money, there's a chance I will lose money if I don't act correctly. Where should I purchase the EUAs from? Ask around. Go to Ether, go to a bank. Avoid brokers because they always put extra commissions. Try to find the one that is a good match for you, that you feel confident, that you have trust. How many should I buy? The first year, it will be the simple strategy of let's wait and see. I have one voyage. Let's see what the charter gives me. Perhaps I will buy for this one voyage. Slowly, I will get familiar with this. I will see what my annual needs will be, because it's different to have 1,000 tons and it's different to have 100,000 tons. And perhaps the following year, I will start a little bit pre-purchasing. I found a good price. Let's buy for the whole year. See how this goes. You have to get familiar with all this. When should we purchase EUAs? That's the perfect question for a trader, not for a naval architect, not for a captain. You have to be aware of the market. And how should I purchase EUAs? This is for the advanced players. Should I buy directly EUA spot? Should I do something hybrid like forward, 40% down payment, delivery after 6 months? Or EUA future? EUA future is risky. There's always the option. What happens if the price goes up? It's not that easy. So you have to be familiar with all those things. Do you have to do it now? No. What do you have to do now? Simply start preparing the MRV. Slowly get familiar with that. Find the verifier. Find a trader. Talk to your charterer. Start discussing about it. Okay? Okay. So, what are Greek owners doing? This is, I don't know if everybody can see, sorry. I will be right here. So this is an example from one of the very reputable Greek owners having 12 Aframaxes and Suezmaxes operating in the Mediterranean area. Based on the 2022 data, they would need to surrender about 23,000 tons for this year. What did they do? They purchased 20,000 tons of CO2 at 80 euro. The price now is 75. They are losing now. But we will have to wait and see until September 25 to see what the price will be then, to have an idea what they did. Why did they purchase these tons now? Because they're in the spot market. They would have to pay for these tons anyway. What was the decisive factor? That they needed to know what the cost will be in order to give out the rates to the charterer. Okay. One way of doing this is to go out and purchase. Otherwise, you have a risk. You don't know. Okay. So, there were actually the first Greek owners that purchased EUAs were tankers on the spot market. They were the first because they will have to pay this from their own pocket. Okay. Another Greek owner, 10 chemical tankers, close to the same amount of EUAs. They purchased 30,000 tons at 78. Are they crying? Do they believe that they lost money? No. They actually believe that the price, September of 25, will be close to 90 to 100. Okay, so it matters how far down the road you look at things. If you have an image of, my God, the price is now 75, I bought at 80, I lost 5. No. What matters is when do you have to surrender and what would be the alternative scenario. What would have happened if you were doing average buying? This is what you should compare. The two basic strategies is buying the dip, meaning find a low price and buy for the whole year, or average buying. These are the two main strategies. These guys preferred buying the dip. They thought it was a dip. Maybe they were right. We don't know. If the price is at 200 next September, then they were right. Yes?
What will be the balance? In case the company closing or whatever, what will be the balance? Let's say we purchased 1 million tons of CO2 and we used roughly half of that. What will be the balance? How we will sell it or what?
You can sell it whenever you want. It's an asset. It's like money in the bank. If you have money in the bank, what can you do with this money? It's exactly the same. Via traders, of course. Yeah. You can sell whenever you want. If you go bankrupt and all the assets are seized by the bank will also seize the EUAs. It's like money. It's exactly like money. And this is why I say, sorry, one thing. This is exactly why I say to most owners, don't accept the charterers making you wait for the EUAs and connecting the surrender date to the date that they will have to give you the allowances. Because if you have a voyage now, and the charterer says, okay, when do you have to surrender? September 25. I will give you the money 1 month before then. I will give you the money or the EUAs 1 month before. It's your asset. You have the liability, so it's your asset. It's like I would leave my money to the charterer. It's like they're telling you, I will not pay you now for this voyage. I will pay you a year and a half. Would you ever accept this? No. If I take this money, these EUAs, I can give it to a trader and get interest. You lose the interest. It's owner's asset because owner has a liability. Don't forget this. Yes? No, you can actually transfer from MOHA. You can transfer from MOHA. No, from a MOHA also you can transfer, I think. Yeah. It's not disallowed. I think you can. I remember asking the Greek ministry about this, and they say, okay, you can transfer. You just need to have the specific amount 30th of September. You can transfer, you can go back, you can put back, you can sell, you can purchase again. They just want the specific number that you owe to be present in your MOHA 30th of September. Nothing else matters to them. It depends on 3 things. On your cash flow, on your profile, are you a trader, are you a charterer, are you an owner, and also on what you have to surrender at the end of the day. It depends. There are many strategies out there, but the main 2 are average buying and buying the dip. These are the main two. After 15 years of implementation, the guys who are experienced with this, imagine a shipping company is very similar in terms of tons per year to a small aviation company of around 5 to 10 airplanes. Okay. The example in Greece is called Sky Express. Okay. As soon these guys are inside for 10 years now. They are very experienced players, and they are making money out of this. As soon as the price hit 50 euros, their annual needs is around 100,000 tons. They bought 300,000. Okay, but they have the cash flow. They know how many years ahead they have to comply. They are very well experienced. They bought 300,000. Forward, 40% down payment, and they get it after 6 months. That's what they did. These are examples. I'm not saying that's the best strategy. It depends on how familiar you are, what your cash flow is. It depends on many factors. There's no one strategy that fits all. Okay? Okay. What about bulkers? Now, this is what will happen to the general cargo industry, because I understand that you're under time charter. Okay. So, the charterer will pay. There are two options, either cash or EUAs directly. If it's EUAs directly, forget it. It's in your account. The only thing that one might consider is to do lending. Go to a charterer, to a trader, say, I have 1,000 tons, take it, trade it, do whatever you want, give me back 1,060 after 6 months. Okay, so that's the interest rate. If, on the other hand, the charters give cash, there are three scenarios. The conservative approach, which is already being followed by Greek owners, the majority of Greek owners, this is what they do. As soon as the money hits my account, I go out and purchase the allowances in order to avoid losing money. It's as simple as that. There is the risky approach. I have the money in my pocket. I have a small loan. Maybe, perhaps I should give it there. You know, it's a year and a half until I have to surrender. Oh, by then, who knows what will happen, you know, so we leave it. The price goes up, the difference will be from our pocket, so it's a risky approach. I wouldn't suggest this. And of course, there is a sophisticated approach, meaning we follow one of the strategies that we discussed, either average buying or buying at a dip, trying to beat the market. But in order to beat the market, you have to be very familiar with it. You have to follow the market. You have to read analysis. You have to spend time, which is a commodity that is more valuable than anything else. So, let's do a summary, and that's the end of the presentation, so I will be open to any questions. These are the 4 basic steps from somebody who is managing general cargo ships between 400 and 5,000 GT. Until the end of the year, choose a verifier, register in Thetis, prepare the plan, and get ready to report. These are the 4 steps we need to do right now. Of course, we can start discussing with charterers, because most likely, you know, charterers will have other vessels under charter, larger than ours, will be experienced already with ETS. So maybe we can learn from them also. What will you guys give me? Will you give me UAs? Will you give me money? How does it work? And they will start complaining, oh my God, this ETS, you know, don't forget about it. Don't tell me again about it. You know, they will start complaining as usual. You might get some information out of them. After 2027, which is the projection, it's not certain, but if we say that ETS will also touch these vessels, we have to open a trading or a holding account and a trading account, find a trader, agree with charterers. The chartering department will have to be extra careful with charter party clauses. There's tons of different clauses out there. There are, you know, the typical charterers approach of trying to, you know, trick you in some points. I will pay you in the surrender date. I will not accept the last paragraph of the BIMCO clause. I will have 0 liability. If you deviate a little bit, I will not pay you. You know, all this type of stuff. There is a lot in there. And the last thing is to try and figure out what will be the strategy. When will I purchase? Okay. Questions. I need at least 3. Not 1, 3 questions. So hit me. Okay. Yes, sir. I'm a technical guy myself, so I love technical matters. Please tell me.
What will happen if the reporting period exceeds? I mean, you are talking about the reporting period between till to 31st of April.
No. The reporting period is January 1st to 31st of December.
Okay, that period must be reported, but verification.
If you submit the data after the deadline. The short answer is nothing. The more elaborate answer is that what actually happens is that a lot of shipping companies are delayed, okay, and they submit their data to the verifier after the deadline. The only risk is not having in your hands a valid DOC by 30th of June. So there is a case, if you delay a lot, that the verifier will not have the time to do the verification and give you the valid DOC. This has happened once or twice in my experience from clients of ours, I mean. And what happened is that the verifier, because they submitted before the end of June, of course, the verifier issued a short-term DOC, so the vessel didn't have any issue with port check control. And after the verification, they issued the full-term DOC, which expired the year after. So in practical life, it's very rare that you see a real problem out of this. What happens is that the verifier will start pushing you, please give us the data, okay, get one vessel, and I will send you the other vessel after 2 days. So at the end of the day, they get them on time before the end of June, and by the end of June, I've actually seen a few verifiers that do the verification after June, but they have already issued the DOC. So, these things happen a little bit. There is some understanding with class, and they might give you valid DOC, although they haven't yet finished. Because don't forget, classification societies have to verify emissions data for over 5,000 ships, Lloyd's, 4,000 ships, DNV, another 3,000. It's a lot of work for them. So they delay as well. Yeah. No, please.
As you know, the voyage is, the next voyage is commencing upon completion of the discharging of any cargo.
Mm-hmm.
In case the completion of cargo finished in November,
Yeah.
and you cannot find cargo till to 15th of January.
And you're stuck there. And you're stuck in the port waiting orders. Doesn't matter. ROB, 31st of December, whatever you have consumed. Doesn't matter. Only the auxiliary engines, nothing else. Doesn't matter.
But the next voyage will commence on 15th of January.
Doesn't matter. ROB, daily noon report, 31st of December. ROB, daily noon report, 31st of December. Meaning you have consumed this amount. And then you start again fresh, January 1st, the next year. Another gentleman was raising the hand. Yes.
Does docking count as a port?
No. Only cargo operations.
Only cargo operations. What if we have to wait at docking period some reasonable amount of time?
2 months, yeah?
Yeah, like 2 months.
So what?
Do we need to pay the ETS?
If you end up in an EU port, yes. Imagine the worst case scenario. Loading Shanghai, unloading in France, ballast leaving, redelivery of the vessel in France, ballast leaving to go to China to dry dock, then going to Australia to load. All this is an EU ETS voyage. This is the worst, from France to Australia. This is what it is. It is what it is. It is not ridiculous or right or wrong. It is what it is. Yes, please. Sorry, yes. Mhm.
And after that, as per some wars or something else,
Mhm.
my voyage has cancelled.
Mhm.
That I have to go back.
I've done the trip around the world 3 times. It doesn't matter. If one of the 2 ports is EU port, it counts as an EU voyage, the entire thing. I go to the moon and back, it counts as an EU voyage. No, sorry, the one behind was first.
Just very small question regarding document of copiers.
Yes.
Let's say if we have no voyages to the EU port, DOC previous year should be keep on board.
No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work like this. What I would suggest is you go to the verifier if you have 0 EU voyages within a year, and you get a statement with 0, an attestation from the verifier that for 2023 the vessel was here. Because if you go within 2024 to EU, you have no DOC. But you will have the attestation saying usually the Port Sea Control knows that the vessel had not been in the EU. So they don't ask for anything.
My question is not like that. Let's say previously in
2022?
I was in Europe.
Mm.
I have DOC.
Mhm.
Also for 24, I have no any voyages to EU.
Mhm.
That statement from verified that the ship not arrived to.
You don't need the statement. If
But for 25, I have to keep DOC of 23 on board or not? Yeah, I'm keeping in the ship file.
That is a good question. I think you have to keep it for at least 3 years, but it expires. The DOC expires every June. Every June, yes. If you get a new DOC now, it is valid until June next year. If you have not been to Europe, that's why I'm saying you have to go to the verifier and get a statement if you know that you're going to Europe. So let's do it perfectly now. 2023, I go to Europe. I go to the verification. I have a DOC that will expire when? June of 25. The DOC will expire in June of 25. 24, I don't go to Europe. 25, I don't go to Europe. I go to Europe September of 25. The DOC has expired. Okay? The Port Sea Control will know that the vessel had not visited, so normally they will not ask for anything. They will only ask for the assessment of the monitoring plan, which I have. If you get across a very strict Port Sea Control officer, Italian guy, you know, who wants to have a DOC, you go to your verifier and you get a statement that the vessel did not visit, and you get a 0 emission statement. So what happens actually after so many years of implementation, the Greek owners, they go to the verifier in any case for all vessels. For the ones that didn't visit the EU, they get a 0 statement. Yes.
I have 2 questions. First one is, I have a green energy investment. Solar
Okay.
farm.
Mm-hmm.
And producing green energy.
Mm-hmm.
In ships,
What?
yes, I have.
What happens? What can I do?
So, in the European Union, they are supporting the green energy. When we producing green energy,
You get what?
solar farm,
Yeah, you get certificate of origin. You know this term? So in Europe, what happens? There is a market that you can trade. Yes, I know. From solar panels or wind farms, you can trade these carbon credits. They are called certificates of origins. There is a market for this. Very low cost. For example, I can sell for a 50 megawatt hour farm, I can get like maybe 5 euros per ton of CO2. It's very small. What I can do is I can use this money to purchase EUAs, but these two do not match. I cannot offset, only financially. I can sell the certificates of origin, and with this money, purchase the EUAs. That's the only thing I can do. I cannot offset one with the other. No, it doesn't work like this. They're not connected.
The second question is, the vessel is less less than the 5,000 gross tonnage.
Mm-hmm.
And the registered in the last society is container ships.
You do not have to do anything.
Okay, in this case, very disadvantage for the general cargo vessels less than the other vessels because
It was the same with the bulkers. It is the same with CII. Don't you know this trick? You remember the CII. Okay, you are aware of the CII. The CII is a rating that is produced based on the required CII, which is again the result of the type of the vessel. Are you aware of the modified bulkers, the Japanese bulkers? No, general cargo. Because it doesn't have a hopper. Okay, so we changed about 40 vessels from bulk carrier to general cargo. What was the result? No EXI, no EPL, and 2 grades better CII rating from E to C. This is a trick in the book. So, European Union goes by the class certificate. If they listen, it's very simple. They know the amount, the number of general cargo ships visiting EU each year. If this becomes half because of that, they will change the rule. It's very simple. But it depends on the class certificate. If you have a dual, let's say, type, container/general cargo, it will catch you. You might need to consider keeping only the container. But I don't know how this affects the commercial trade of the vessel. Maybe a charterer wants a general cargo. Depends. Any other question? Yes, please.
Philip, thank you for your excellent presentation. Are we going to get this presentation?
Yes, of course. I will share it with everybody in PDF.
That's great. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. I hope I wasn't too boring or tired you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Evet, bütün katılımcılar için ve salon boşalmadı.
The official stuff. Let me button up.
Son saatler, son dakikalar hep boşalır ama gerçekten güzel bir katılım var. Ben hepinize teşekkür ediyorum. Alfa Marine'e, Bay Filip'e, Ali kardeşime. Tabii Celal abi seni de buraya rica ediyorum. Sponsorumuz bugünkü bütün katkılarından dolayı. Gerçekten Mahsus ve Celal abiye çok teşekkür ediyorum. Küçük bir şeyimiz olacak abi. Paket takdimimiz olacak. Tabii organizasyon yapılmasında Ali kardeşimle çalışan Sedat kardeşime ve Ümit kardeşime de çok teşekkür ediyorum. Günün anısına klasik bir sizinki buyurmuyor Sedat.
Thank you very much.
Sonra bir toplu resim rica edeceğim sizden.
Didn't go too bad. Huh?
Evet, son
Didn't go too bad.
şeyimizde Ali kardeşime Esko Mali Alfa Mali İstanbul'a